APU. American Public University is proud to present The Everyday Scholar.
Hello, my name is Dr. Bjorn Mercer, and welcome to The Everyday Scholar. Today we are talking to Nuno Fernandes, President of American Public University System, and Lori Glover, Managing Director, MIT CSAIL Alliances. And today we're talking about the promise of AI in education and beyond. Welcome, Nuno, and welcome, Lori.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. And so we're excited to have you. So, Lori, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Thank you. So I am the Managing Director of Strategic Alliances at MIT CSAIL. CSAIL is the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab at MIT. We are the largest lab and obviously specializing in everything computer science and artificial intelligence. And the interesting thing at CSAIL is we are completely cross-disciplinary. So the research done in the lab is from all 5 schools across the institute. And of course, there is an impact in education.
Excellent. Thank you. And Nuno, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Bjorn. Yeah, I think it's the second podcast we're doing together. So pleasure being here today. I'm the president of American Public University System. I think I know Lori for 10 years now. It's been a long, doesn't sound like 10 years, but it's been like 10 years. And it's certainly a pleasure to be sharing this podcast with Lori today.
Thank you, Nuno.
We're going to jump into these questions. So the first one is, what is the importance of AI in higher education? So there's a lot of ways you can jump into that. So Lori, why don't you start with that question?
So AI in higher education is very important. It is a tool that is going to be ubiquitous in all forms of the workplace. And having students have an understanding of not only its capabilities, but also its challenges is incredibly important. So I know Nuno has a vision for artificial intelligence at APUS, and I'd love to hear how he's thinking about it.
Yeah, thank you, Laurie. So I always tell this story, but I think it's important because if you go back in time to the first university that ever existed, and it was almost 1,000 years ago, and the concept was that you have a professor and then you have the students, and the professor was transmitting the knowledge to the students, and then the students were sort of memorizing that, and then they would do an exam, and then eventually they would get a degree. And that was 1,000 years ago. And you fast forward, it's not that different today. Even when you are in an online environment like APUS, right, where we deliver education through a computer, it's kind of the same concept in the sense that you have a faculty that creates the knowledge, that transmits the knowledge, and then the students, they learn, and then they do an exam, and if they pass, they progress to the next course, and so on and so forth until they graduate. But the concept is sort of the same. And I think it's one of the few industries that has not been disrupted by technology in 1,000 years, probably the only one. But if you think about AI, I think that for the first time, we are being presented with tools that can significantly change the teaching and learning experience. And they can create something that has not been done, which is to adapt the program and the educational experiences to the student, to personalize that experience. And that has existed for many years now in other industries, right? If you think about Netflix or Spotify or Amazon, when you go there, it's customized for you. They try to show you things that you want and things that you like. But in education, if the 3 of us go to start an MBA, we're all going to do the same MBA, the same content, the same exams, the same classes, which doesn't make a lot of sense because we're all different and we learn in different ways. So I think AI is going to provide these tools to enhance the teaching and learning experience, to provide a better personalized experience for the students, but also to enhance the faculty to be able to do things that today are literally impossible to do manually.
I'd like to also add on about the learning experience of the students. And think about it when we all went to school. You're focused on learning from the teacher, memorizing, trying to process that information, and then provide back what the faculty member or the teacher wanted you to learn. Learning is so much more democratized now. And students are able to take a concept and really use artificial intelligence tools to open an ocean of information. And then from there, they can really expand their learning in ways that was never possible before. And I think that is just really incredible change to what's available to students today. And with that, it's also, making its way into the workplace and really teaching students not only how to use the AI tools, also understand the challenges and the ethics, but it gives them this amazingly enhanced creativity and ability to explore and just really take their knowledge to the next level and be incredibly even more impactful in the workforce.
I think for everyone, but for schools like APUS that are very much focused on expanding access to quality higher education at affordable prices, what AI will allow to do is offer experiences that before were just not possible from a financial perspective to afford. Things as simple as, for example, video production in a course. Right? If you wanted to do high quality video production until very recently, and maybe even today, if you hire someone to do that, if you go to a studio and you do the whole experience as it has been done over the last decades, it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. But today you can create high quality videos for cents, and that will only accelerate. So I think, to Laurie's point, it will help democratize access to high quality content. It will help democratize access to information and tools that simply were not available for students before.
And I really love those examples because not only are they important for the future of learning, but they're practical. And they're what students can experience today. And just like you said, Nuno, people today, we're so used to media. Our cell phones and everything, we live in a media-rich, saturated society. And so by presenting them learning opportunities that they're used to, will help them learn down the road, rather than just the sage on the stage. It's been around for 1,000 years. It's totally fine. Actually, it's been around as long as humans have been around. So the next concept we're looking at really is, what does the future look like for AI in education? And I really liked what you talked about was individualization and personalized learning. How do you see AI delving a little more into that to truly help students?
Utilizing AI to really help students. In the past, if you needed to have technical skills to code, or be an artist to create an image, or be a writer to write something, everyone learns differently. Everyone has different skills, but AI enhances our ability to do those things. Where you think of like writer's block, or someone not sure how to start an essay, you can use ChatGPT or any of the other AI tools to be able to get yourself started. And you can, modify it and correct it and really make it your own. But there are all these tools now that can help everyone do a whole bunch of things that they might not have thought they could do before. I mean, think of coding. It was always, if you knew how to code, that was like the biggest challenging thing, like learning to code. Well, now artificial intelligence can write code for you, and you don't need to learn it. It's just a really amazing tool that just brings all kinds of resources to the students now.
To complement what Laurie said, I look at education as sort of a passage that you need to do to get a job or to get a better job. At MIT, you have a lot of professional researchers, people that dedicate their life to academic research, and that's fantastic. But most people don't go to higher education to do that, right? Most people go to higher education to get a degree and then get a job or get a better job. And what I believe will happen is that AI is going to transform a lot of jobs, and consequently, the learning experience will also have to adapt itself. So to take on what Laurie was saying, think about computer science. Just until recently, if you had a master's in computer science, you'd probably learn about coding and languages and things like that. But now you're still going to learn about that, but in a very different way, right? You're probably going to learn about how to interpret the code that was created by ChatGPT or by whatever other tool. I always say, I think a lot of jobs will become like airplane pilots. And what I mean by this is that you're going to be looking at all these things, right? And all these numbers and all this code, or even in it, and you're going to be able to spot if there's any inconsistency, if there's any problem. You're going to be able to correct what is needed to correct. Just like an airplane pilot, the plane is pretty much flying itself, but the pilot is there to see if there's anything wrong. And I think that will end up happening in the medical field. That will end up happening with lawyers. That will end up happening with programmers. And many other initiatives, creative people in marketing, in advertising agencies and things like that. The job is still the same, but the way to execute is completely different. And I think that's going to be the biggest change. Is universities traditionally they don't react very well to change and to innovation. They take a lot of time to adapt. I mean, MIT is certainly an exception. And now, if you are studying computer science, to use that same example, and you don't adapt your content, you're basically teaching a person things that are completely irrelevant when that person graduates. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on the university side. And I think it's good pressure because it's going to be forcing us to adapt to the real needs of the job market, which is eventually why the students are here.
And in the jobs, we really look at it as task, not entire jobs. So the more routine, the more predictable things definitely can be automated or addressed by AI. I like to say right now we're experiencing probably the worst AI we'll see. It's only going to get better from here. And that means the hallucinations, the misinformation, that will get perfected and we won't be experiencing that. I joke about, I recently wrote a book, and when I had taken down notes on a particular quote, and I had just written Science Board to 2012. And I couldn't remember, like, what science board, what was it? But the quote was there. So I said, okay, I'll put the quote in ChatGPT and say, where did I get this from? What science board said it? It didn't say the science board said it. It said it, I said it, and I didn't say it. So it definitely hallucinates. It makes mistakes. But its impact will be felt in all kinds of jobs. Definitely medical field is seeing a lot of it. Lawyers are seeing a lot of it. There's still that critical thinking, that reasoning, that distilling of the information for action. That's what humans need to do. And that is something that AI can never, you can't replace that.
Yeah, just like the airplane pilot, right? You still want a human there and making sure that everything is working fine. But it is true. I just read this week that, I think it was ChatGPT, one of those, that it is able to detect cancer with 99% of the times and more efficient than any human. So what this means is that the doctors will have to adapt, right? And the doctors will have to start learning about these tools, and they will have to, how can I use this to the benefit of the patient? I think we are in this sort of strange moment in time where AI is this big deal because it's new, and we, like us, we're here talking about AI, doing a podcast about it. But eventually it will just become part of our lives in ways like the internet became part of our lives, right? And we don't talk about that anymore. Like, we don't say we're doing this podcast on the internet, or nobody says, I'm going to go shopping on the internet, or I'm going to have a meeting on the internet. It just becomes part of your life, of everything that you do. And I think with AI, we're going to see a lot of that it's just going to slowly be part of augmenting the capacities and the strengths and the efficiencies of humans in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to kind of comment one thing that Nuno said about how slow universities are to change. And that is absolutely true. As, even to try and create a new course or something, it takes a long time. But what most universities are able to do is to help their faculty use these tools in their individual classes. We have a guide on the different tools and suggestions for helping faculty to integrate AI tools into their class, helping their students learn to use these tools, and therefore helping them better prepare them for the workforce.
I think it was 2023 that we did our AI policy, and we are also motivating faculty and students to actually use AI in the classroom, because when they graduate, they will have to use it, right, in the job place when they get a job. So it's always this example that I probably told this to you before, but it's like the calculator example, right? That in the 80s, you had all these protests and people saying you can't use calculator inside the classroom. But that was silly, because once you graduate, you can use the calculator. So why wouldn't you use the calculator? It was not like, okay, I'm an accountant, let me not use a calculator to run the taxes for this person. Of course you're going to use a calculator. So the same with AI. And I think the more we help the students and the faculty to use it, of course, in ethical ways and in ways that are properly described in academic policy, we're doing them a service. We're helping them being more successful.
And I love these examples because, number one, they're practical and they're forward-looking. And especially what both you said is that expertise. And so it really makes me think of a podcast I heard with the CEO of NVIDIA, where he was asked, what degree, what should I go get? And he said, well, you need domain expertise. And with that domain expertise, whatever your field is, you will then be able to interact effectively and efficiently with an AI tool. Versus a student today, they might have domain expertise in something, but say not in what they're studying. And so they have to skill up. And so experts, lawyers, the airplane pilot has domain expertise. They know how to do it. And they're constantly interacting with their Gen AI tool. Versus students might interact and be like, well, it looks good, but they need to edit it. They need to have that iterative process, especially for students and helping faculty at this early stage of adaptation to become comfortable and then use their domain expertise to help teach students. Now, the next thing is some real world examples. Now, Laura, you have an example of Air Force test pilot training, don't you?
With the Air Force Accelerator, the Air Force AI Accelerator that we have at MIT, we have a program that is called Guardian Autonomy for Safe Decision Making. And it is Air Guardian, and it aims to advance AI and autonomy by developing algorithms and tools for augmenting and amplifying the human decision-making process. It is a support system that is useful in the presence of surprises and complex situations. And it's an end-to-end machine learning algorithms that learn how experts respond and help people in their response situations.
Well, I have an example. It's not as exciting as the Air Force, but we're doing it at EP now an implementation of an AI tool to automate the transfer credit, which is a process that today can take anywhere from 2 to 7 days, right? When a student wants to transfer credits to EP, there's a manual process, and that process is being automated. And hopefully, from days, we're going to go to minutes or maybe even to seconds, right? To be able to offer a better experience to the student or the prospect student that is interested in applying and studying at EP. So that's one real example of how you offer a better experience by adapting technology. I think we're literally going to go from days to at least 2 minutes, but maybe seconds.
Excellent. Thank you for those wonderful examples. I think one of the things that people want to hear is people watch a lot of videos, a lot of podcasts of the future of AI, in which people talk about the future that's not here yet. And so it's really great to hear and to understand that there are many, many ways in which AI is impacting us today and will help with efficiencies and also do things that for humans, we're like, oh, I got to spend 30 minutes on this. But then the AI will take minutes, which ideally will free up us to do other things, more important things that require critical thinking. And so today we're talking to Nuno Fernandes and Lori Glover about the promise of AI in education and beyond. We'll be right back after this short break.
At American Public University, we believe higher education is not one size fits all. That's why we offer 200 modern programs that build on your knowledge and fit your schedule. Because we believe universities should adapt to the needs of students, not the other way around. American Public University, within reach, without limits. Online classes start every month. Learn more at americanpublicu.com.
And we are back with Nuno Fernandes and Lori Glover with the promise of AI in education and beyond. And so the next topic we're talking about is empowering learners. Nuno, I know you've got some great ideas for that.
It's one of the changes I believe will happen in higher education. A lot of the power is going to be transferred to the student, but in a monitored, controlled manner. So to use the example I mentioned previously, right? Today, if you enroll in a program, in a course, you're going to follow the same path that everyone else is following by doing that course. But that should not be the case because every person has different experiences, has different ways of learning, has different tastes. Right? Some people like to watch videos, some people like to listen to podcasts, some people like to read, some people like to write, and that's how each person learns in different ways. So with these new tools that are being provided, what I think will happen is that the student will have the capacity to sort of decide what's the best route for him or for her within the academic standards that are of course established for that particular course or program. But the experience will be a lot richer than what it is today and a lot more flexible. So a lot of the power will be transferred to the students. I saw a tool last week, just as an example, where you can have a PDF, let's say you're reading a PDF or you're reading a book, and then the tool allows you to convert that PDF or that book into a podcast. So let's say you really like podcasts, and that's how you memorize things, and that's how, you're working out, you're listening to a podcast. So you can just ask the tool to convert that PDF into a podcast, and then you have what sounds like two perfectly normal humans talking about the content of that PDF. And I thought that was brilliant because a lot of people do like to listen and might relate to that tool. And it's just a very small example of how the tool, the content is going to be adapted to the needs and the desires of each student.
I think that's a really important point because people learn in different ways. And that is one thing that AI can certainly do, is really take the content and help the student learn in a way that's best for them. And I know most people do watch videos. I'm not really a video person. I prefer to read. So, that's how I learn and retain best. Other people, it is videos. There's so many different learning trajectories that people, how they process information. And AI makes a lot of it available in a way that's best for the student.
And I love those examples because it makes me think of, I created a video for students on how to use AI to augment their learning. And so I use the example, I like to learn about witches in the 16th and 17th century southern Germany during the horrible witch trials that happened during that time. And so I had the book I was reading and I had ChatGPT open. And so as I was reading it, I was like, okay, wait, what was the Holy Roman Empire? So I put it in there. It gave me an explanation. It's like, wait, who was ruling at that time? It gave me an explanation. And so it gave me great context, readily acceptable historical context, I should say. But it does a really good job of augmenting that learning, especially in things like history or things that are readily acceptable. That sounds funny. You shouldn't ask it about like something today. It's going to be potentially all over the place or political. How about that?
I think you really hit on something important. I mean, the way that these AI models are trained, they're trained on vast amounts of data, available data. So what they're doing is it's taking this information and giving it back to you based on the question that you asked. The thing that humans do is you can take that data and go, well, wait a second. Well, what about this? And you can kind of leverage the AI tool to give you more information than you could have pulled on your own to jump to an even more creative idea. And I think that's where the beauty in learning is. We're going to be able to leverage these tools to explore things that as an individual, we weren't able to pull all these sources together in one place. And now we can. And then we can look at what's possible.
Let's say you are learning about some topic, let's say some war, but think about like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and you were inside a library and you were reading a physical book, right? And then you say, oh, I don't really understand this. So what would you do? You would have to go and look for more books to try to figure out what you didn't understand. And then you would have to look for those books. And maybe you would ask the professor the next day, like, I didn't understand. And then the professor, maybe he or she had time to answer or not. But today, if you have a question or if you have, want to do a follow-up, you just ask and you immediately get the information. I mean, that is brilliant. And as a tool for learning, the potential is, I would say, almost unlimited, because there's nothing that you can't learn about. And it really depends on your curiosity, on your critical thinking, and on your aspirations. So before, what would take probably 2 or 3 days for you to get some sort of okay answer, today you can do it in seconds on your phone, and that's brilliant.
We always have to think of domain expertise. I like using that term a lot because you have to have a certain amount of authority as you're interacting with information. And so as you're interacting, you're always double checking. You're double checking in your own lived experience and knowledge, but also constantly checking to make sure that you're going in the right direction. It's not only you're learning, but you're course correcting yourself. Students don't quite have that yet. And that is, of course, the skills that we're looking at. And so the last thing we're looking at is looking ahead. So the future uses. And of course, Lori, can you also talk about your book?
I just had one comment on the domain expertise. I don't know if you've seen recently the claims that the ChatGPT could pass the bar in the 90th percentile. I don't know if you saw that one. Being a lawyer, I'm like, oh, geez, what does that mean? But MIT did a further study. And this is where I think it's also really important to look at when you take a tool like AI, what situation are you putting it in? Because the rate that it passed the bar in the 90th percentile, it was pitted against repeat test takers. So people who have already failed the bar once. So they were not the people who had studied and passed the bar. So it was already in a group of people who were struggling with the bar. So maybe against that, it did. But then when it took it against everybody, normally would take the bar, it was only in like the 48th percentile. There's an MIT study, and I don't remember the name of it, but it's also look how it's being compared. Even when you have domain expertise, like you've studied for that bar exam and you know it, it still has limitations, against human reasoning and what humans can do. But in terms of the future, I think there's incredible promise. And I do think that the tools that are coming out, particularly in things like drug discovery and cancer treatment, there's just so much possibility. And helping people with the tasks that they have every day, taking some of the repetitive tasks or ones that aren't very creative or exciting and automating them and freeing people up to do more creative things that are more rewarding for work. I think that promise is amazing. And yes, I do have a new book coming out, and it's called Innovation Alchemy, building strong industry partnerships for impact and economic growth. And it's just really important, I think, now with all this innovation that's happening, that we come together to really get the innovations out of the university labs and research centers into the public domain with commercial expertise and scaling it up so it really benefits people around the world and we can have economic benefit.
Yeah, from my side, I agree entirely. I think in terms of healthcare and lifespan and longevity, AI will have impacts in ways that I don't think we can even imagine what those are. But sometimes what seems impossible is really not that impossible, right? And I just read recently that, the average age of a person during the Roman Empire was like 32 years old. That was the average. So the average age today in the US, I think, is like 79 or 80. And in other parts of the world, even more. So if someone would tell, the Romans back in the day, they say, okay, well, people in the future are going to live 3 times more than you, you'd say, well, that's impossible. The same way that it sounds impossible if we say to someone that you're going to live 270 years today. But certainly AI and these new developments will, I think, improve the lifespan of people, improve longevity and the quality of life. Now, bringing it back to more, let's say, educational related topics, I think that the main challenge that we have inside the universities is to be able to train and to work with the faculty for them to face this new reality, right? For them to be these new airplane pilots, for them to be able to work with the students, but in different ways than what they've been working until now, because the circumstances are different. And I think it's going to be a fantastic thing to do. If anything, the role of the faculty is going to be even more important and it's going to be even more relevant than what it is today. But certainly it will need to change. And I think that's the challenge that we need to address in the next months and years.
Absolutely wonderful conversation. A lot to think about, a lot to chew on, if to say it that way. But absolutely wonderful conversation about the promise of AI in education and beyond. So thank you, Lori and Nuno, for a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And of course, my name is Dr. Bjorn Mercer, and thank you for listening.
For more information about our university, visit us at studyatapu.com. APU, American Public University.